Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We are excited to have you here. If this is your first time, thanks for joining a FlexJobs webinar. If you have been here before, welcome back. We always start each of our webinars just with a little bit of housekeeping and some time for attendees to join and get settled. So bear with us as we give everyone a minute or so to pop in. We always like to say during this part, while we wait for people to get logged in, please let us know where you are joining from. Our team really likes to see where everybody is when they are with us. Usually we have a pretty well represented map across the world. So that's really fun. A couple things to note before we dive into our content today. We are recording this presentation and we will send you the link to the recording, including the Q&A, as well as any resources that we reference during the slides. So you will have that within the next few days. It comes to the email address that you use to register for the event. Note that we have pre-recorded the first part of the presentation. However, the Q&A is live following the presentation with one of our career experts. So for those questions that you have, please take note of the Q&A section in big marker. This is where the questions that you have should go. It gives people the opportunity to upvote or give those a thumbs up, so we can prioritize and get through as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation. Please feel free to use the chat section to communicate with us, to also communicate with other attendees. There is generally a lot of support out there for what everybody is going through in their job search. So we appreciate everybody's participation if you feel so inclined. All right, so let's look at the topics that we will be covering today. First, we'll talk about, why it's important to research employers and how that can impact your job search. We'll talk about some tips and tricks, as well as the difference really in being proactive versus reactive, and some suggestions for how you'll be able to expand your knowledge base to really put this strategy into play as you continue your job search. And of course, as I mentioned, we do have some time for questions. All right, so let's talk about why you want to research employers or why it is important. We know that job searches are taking on average 5 months or more in many cases. And so once you've identified your career goals and your values, you really want to layer in this approach of researching employers. And why is that? Well, because luck favors the prepared, if we pull out that old saying. And you're going to really begin doing some research work prior to beginning your job search or at the very beginning of your job search. Many reasons to research employers beyond, just the normal interview prep or when you're filling out your applications are things like relocation. Does this company offer relocations? Will you have to relocate? Maybe you're doing a career change into a new industry, which is going to layer in some necessity to research organizations. Maybe you're pivoting back to a previous position that you've had before or something that you did earlier in your career. Researching companies is great for your general job search and if you are going back to work after a career break. And we really want you to set an intention about, the quote, luck favors the prepared, because many of us have been in situations where if we had been better prepared, if we had done some research prior to the event or to the meeting or whatever it is, results may have gone in a different direction. So knowing that you need to prepare and actually doing the preparation are really different. So with that in mind, keep this in the back of your mind throughout today's information that luck favors the prepared. And what we're really encouraging you to do with this presentation is to figure out or understand some ways that maybe you haven't thought about before in terms of getting to the bottom of what companies you might want to work for and, positioning yourself in your job search with that focus too. Why though, right? Why is this important? Because research is the key to feeling confident about your decisions, about your mindset, and it can also help set the groundwork for different competencies. We know through various surveys that FlexJobs has done over the last year or so that people are thinking about quitting or have already quit their jobs. Over 60% of employees because of toxic work culture, poor management, or poor work-life balance. So if you really can be confident in finding companies that you would like to work for, ultimately when you land a job, it is going to be a better fit than if you don't focus on this research at all. This helps you gather information. It helps you answer questions that pop up while you are doing your research, while you are exploring, job opportunities and things like that. Some opportunities that might arise from doing this research might be quick conversations and discussions at, social or networking events with your spouse or partner, or, locally with your friends. You might have email exchanges with former colleagues, with old friends, acquaintances, and even some strangers that you might reach out and connect with, to do some digital networking. Part of your research may lead to invitations to professional events. You might find hidden job opportunities that aren't ever posted because of the work that you do to dive in to some of this. So people, connections, and these exchanges are really valuable, almost as or just as valuable as an open job posting. In our current lives, machines, computers, software platforms are boundless. They are everywhere. And you've probably heard of ChatGPT recently. In the end, it is the people who are the decision makers, even with all of those tools. And so it is the people who you have conversations. It is the people who make the decisions and hire people. So prepare and research so that you can engage with knowledge when you talk to these folks. Also, before we move on to the next slide, learning more about organizations that you're interested in can really help break the ice or make you more comfortable and confident in your initiating a conversation with somebody. And that can really turn into more connections, more friendships, more job opportunities, and really expanding your knowledge base is a goal of researching companies. All of this to say that you want to keep your expectations realistic. This is going to give you a more authentic approach to your job search and make you a more relatable person as you are in the process. All right. So let's talk about these tips and tricks for putting this into practice. All right. Now that you have listened to me and have heard what I have to say about the importance of researching organizations, let's look at what might be accomplished within your first 30 days of layering in this practice. So I encourage you to consider your first goal to be researching, finding, and identifying industries, and then associated employers or companies that interest you. Now, these could be established industries or new and emerging industries. I already mentioned AI and ChatGPT, as well as developed companies or startups. All right, so a few ways to find these industries and employers. You will conduct or can conduct a deep dive into things like regional economic development websites. This might entail county or city pages. There might be some employment or industry portals, also local chamber of commerce websites, and of course, job boards, right? FlexJobs. There are other job boards like LinkedIn and Glassdoor where you can find other positions or other companies and jobs. Another way that you can harness the power of technology or the internet in particular is Google Maps, you could type in an industry that intrigues you and it will populate with employers in your local area, which is really good if you are looking for an in-person or even a hybrid job. That can give you a list of companies to explore that maybe you hadn't thought of. You can also reach out to or research on professional associations. Of course, company web pages are a wealth of information for you. And beyond the company web page, you can look at the different digital social platforms that companies use, like Twitter, LinkedIn, Meta, and Instagram, even Pinterest. Most companies will use, particularly those that hire a lot of creative people. So I want to give some examples of industries and associated employers identified in a specific city for research. So you can easily find and explore things like key sectors and associated subsectors, listings of other employers in the industry for more exploration, and professional associations to explore. So these are key industries in a regional area. I believe we looked at Raleigh, North Carolina. So there are life sciences is a big industry in this area. And then there are some subsectors like pharmaceuticals and biopharmaceuticals. And that is something that maybe you won't have thought of if you were just reading through different job postings on job boards. You also, as I mentioned, can explore employers in a regional location. This is a sector map of noting employer locations. So it's helpful, again, as I mentioned, for hybrid opportunities. It can help you identify a specific employer and how it relates to a location. So if we look at the finding resource for Thermo Fisher Scientific, we're going to use Thermo Fisher as an example throughout the rest of the presentation. This is from a regional company directory. So you want to be open to all types of resources when identifying employers to explore. And when you create this expansion in your job search, that is going to really give you, sometimes you have to expand something in order to constrict it again a little bit later. And that's really what doing this research is going to do. It's going to help you gather your information and move to the decision-making process to cut out the companies that might not be a match for you. In terms of, let's say you identify Thermo Fisher in your regional area and you're interested in learning more about the company, I always encourage people to go to the FlexJobs website because we have a database of over 57,000 companies that will have key information, particularly about remote and hybrid opportunities, which I know for those of you that are here, that's what most of you are looking for. So this is an example of an employer description as we have it on the website. You can see that you can link to the actual Thermo Fisher Scientific website. You can see the accolades that the company has. You can get linked to their Twitter, their social channels, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You'll learn a little bit more about Thermo Fisher Scientific, their work flexibility that they offer, and if they have remote jobs on their site, which they do. And I have copied one here over on the slide for a senior research scientist. So you can really start at this spot and then expand your research on this particular company, depending on if you're seeing what you like. So many job boards will now expand or have expanded to include remote and hybrid filters. So if that's something you're interested in, you certainly can do that on the FlexJobs site, but other job boards may let you do that as well. So we have different remote filters for you to choose from: 100% remote, hybrid, open to remote, or an option for remote. So you can also then filter further to see what type of classified workers this organization has. If you're looking for an employee role, a freelance or temporary role, you can also filter for that, as well as different schedules. All right. This slide shows examples on how you can conduct a reverse job search, meaning looking at companies first so that you can identify them and those that may be of interest for exploration and research for you. So I would go to the company guides page and search either by location or by group or category. You can see that on the bottom left of the slide. You can search by different type of job, category, or location. Now, remember, this is an or, it's not and. So you have to pick one or the other. And we, on the right-hand side, have some examples of science employers based on the science job filter that we selected. All right, so those were some quick examples, particularly related to the FlexJobs site, as well as searching regionally. And when you then sort of get beyond the identification of a list of companies that you want to target, the next part of your plan, you want to consider expanding your research to include a more well-rounded view of these companies. So you can find out and should find out more about the company's financial footing, who their competitors are, how you might be able to network with this company, any news that might not be company driven, and outside reviews of the organizations. And on the next 3 slides, we will demonstrate what you can find and explore when delving into a more complete picture of a company. You can find this information through the following, these are some of the following resources that we've used: Dun and Bradstreet, Crunchbase, annual reports, which is for-profit companies, or GuideStar, which is a website for nonprofit companies. It's also good to explore how companies are discussed through former employee reviews. Many of you have probably used or know or have at least heard of Glassdoor, so that's a great place to look as well. You can certainly lean into other digital or social media channels too. All right, the examples on the left and top right on this slide are from Dun and Bradstreet. So this would be if you wanted to learn more about a company and you looked at their company page, you looked on FlexJobs, you looked on LinkedIn, you can then go to Dun and Bradstreet. You can see how you can obtain an overview of the company. It shows you competitors. There's a category for financial statements, etc. Utilizing the contacts category is a great way to tap into what we have mentioned here, and you may have heard of the hidden job market, and be able to expand your network. Now, Dun and Bradstreet, you do have to pay for. However, many libraries, public libraries, will offer the subscription for free. So it's worth looking into, and you can just head over to your library and take advantage of that resource. The screenshot titled on the bottom right, Older Archived Annual Reports, was obtained through annualreports.com. So this site gives you a sense of overall financial growth, how stable a company is, if a specific department is doing well, and a few more things. So for those who might be interested in obtaining this type of information, you can go to annualreports.com, and also for nonprofit organizations, you would use GuideStar. All right, so more on Thermo Fisher Scientific. Hopefully you're getting the idea here. This is, or some new ideas on how you can delve deeper into the research on organizations, aside from the most obvious ones, right? Some of these things were new to me when I first was working on this presentation. And so I'm really happy to be sharing this information with you so that you can take it and really be more laser focused on whether or not these companies that you are interested in would really be a good fit. So this example is taken from Crunchbase, which is similar to Dun & Bradstreet, but it also has recent news articles, which I find to be really nice because all the information then is in one place. And seeing that there are there is news or press releases posted in the same year that you're looking for a job at that company is, comforting. They're active and they're, making moves and getting themselves out there. So just look and make sure the information you see on Crunchbase is consistent with all of the other sites. And you really should do that. Cross-check all of your research. All right. On the left, we have sub-organizations. This is another sample from Dun and Bradstreet and is a listing of other organizations which are associated with Thermo Fisher Scientific, with that organization. So this can give you another list of additional companies to explore, maybe to expand your options on your lead generation or on your list. On the right, we have a picture from Glassdoor. I've mentioned Glassdoor in this presentation, and we talk about it in a few others as well. But it's great to utilize when you're looking for employee reviews and exploring salaries. We recommend reading Glassdoor reviews to see whether employees' experiences line up with the way the company has portrayed itself on their digital channels. For example, if your strongest work-life value, is work-life balance, and you see many negative comments about that topic on Glassdoor or on social media posts, you might then reconsider or note that on your list so you can determine how much time you should actually invest in spending researching that company and applying for jobs there. LinkedIn and the Muse also have some outside reviews of organizations, so that might be those are two other options that you can take advantage of as part of your extensive research on these organizations. All right, so let's talk about driving this search and some things that you can do. Earlier, I talked about, we'll mention one of the topics today of being proactive versus reactive. And this is so important in your job search in its entirety. But I really want to talk about the difference between proactive and reactive job searching. So the top line, or the top three phrases here: deep dive research, professional events, and hidden job market. This is more proactive approach to job searching than looking at job boards, submitting many applications, and not following up. Researching employers is the first step, quickly followed by networking and utilizing the hidden job market through those network connections. Your involvement in driving and managing your job search is key. You do not want to be a passive job seeker, particularly when you need a job. So sometimes being the driver is better than being the passenger. When we talk about these general tactics, like only using job boards, filling out application after application, etc., this is more like you are relying only on what is presented to you through those job boards or those resources, signing up for them, creating job positions and alerts. And we are not telling you not to do that, right? That is something you have to do. But also this other proactive approach is another piece to layer in to help carry your job search forward. Waiting and waiting and waiting can lead to no forward movement and getting frustrated. We know that the number of applicants for every job is very high right now. And so waiting and reacting to what comes your way is not necessarily the best thing that you can do, particularly when there are some other key strategies to implement to make sure that you are doing the best for yourself as you are executing your job search. All right, so what do you do next with this information? You want to really think about creating a 30, 60, 90-day research plan, or whatever time frame will work for you in terms of diving into this research. The whole key is that you have a plan that you can follow and you will execute so that you can learn more about these companies and really focus on companies that would be of interest to you to work for. All right. Identify what sources you are going to use for your research. Certainly, not everybody wants to work locally or is interested or needs to do that. So using Google Maps as a search to find a hybrid job might not be what you need to do, but it certainly is an option there. So figure out what research resources you are going to use. Don't forget to really dive into some of the finer detail of a company, like their financial standing, their social media channels. You're really trying to get to know the company like you would get to know a person that you just meet. Remember to stay proactive and add this strategy into your job search. As you start to develop and grow in your network connections, that's going to help you move into the quote unquote hidden job market, where people may, through your conversations and the relationships that you develop, may have ideas for jobs for you, or they may know of jobs that aren't posted at their organization that they can put you in contact with somebody else at the organization. As with any part of your job search, this is, I don't know, I don't want to speak for everybody, but for me in the past, when I've been looking for a job, it's very hard to remain patient and confident and to trust the process. But really, that is the key for what we need to do here in terms of finding our next job. It's out there. There's just a lot of work that most of us will have to do in order to get there. And hopefully this information that we're sharing today is giving you some new ideas or strategies to continue to move forward. And as promised, we do have we will be sending a link to the recording as well as these resources. And if you have any other ideas or need any other information or resources in terms of your job search and anything else related to it on any topic, please go to the FlexJobs.com blog. That's where we have all of that information, and you'll find just so many resources there. So let's go ahead and see what we have in the Q&A. Thanks for being here today. And I want to go to the questions. Thanks, everyone.
All right, folks, we are now going to move into our Q&A portion of the webinar today. Before we get started, could someone let me know in the chat section if you can hear me all right? All right, wonderful. Thank you very much. So my name is Keith Spencer, and I am one of the career experts here at FlexJobs, and I'll be answering your questions today. Just as a quick reminder, if you have a question that you'd like to ask, please make sure that you're using the Q&A tab to ask that question. And if you see someone else's question that you'd like to hear the answer to, please feel free to click that thumbs up button so I know which questions are most popular. So let's go ahead and dive in. Our first question here says, do you think it's worth putting one's resume in a company's talent pool / community? Do the company recruiters actually look into the talent pool? Yeah, so that's a really good question. In my mind, I think it's always, worth taking that approach, especially if you are really interested in that organization. It's going to differ, whether or not the recruiters are actually looking at that talent pool, or whether the company even has that as an available resource, is going to differ company to company, and can differ in individual situations as well. If you're thinking of it from the recruiter standpoint, their job is to fill open roles. So if they get a ton of applicants for different roles, and they don't necessarily need to leverage reaching out into the community talent pool, or searching LinkedIn for people with the open to work banner, or searching by keywords, then they might not do that, if they already have a large applicant pool to begin with. But if they have a role that is proving to be a little bit more difficult to fill, they might then tap into those resources, their talent pool, or searching on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn also has a feature that is fairly new. I'm not sure when it specifically started, but companies on their company profiles on LinkedIn are able to, set a feature where you'll see it says like interested in working with us in the future. It'll say like maybe you're not ready to apply, or you don't see a relevant role. You could click that you're interested, so that their recruiters are able to see your profile. And I believe that your interest, your expressed interest in that organization, will then show to them for up to a year or so. So in my mind, it never hurts to submit, your resume, or click your interest in a company, if you are particularly attracted to that organization and want to work for for them, just know that, it isn't necessarily going to lead you to getting an interview or getting a job through that strategy. But I think there is no downfall to using that strategy. So I would recommend, if it is an organization, like I said, that you are particularly interested in, you want to work for, go for it, worth a shot, especially if you don't see a role that's, really speaks to you in that moment. They might tap into that resource later on if a new role comes open, and they could see you there. So, if you're going to do that, though, I will say, you want to make sure that you are putting your best foot forward there. So think about the types of roles with that organization that you would want to be in, and try to, as best you can, even though it's going to be a more general version of your resume, try as best you can to kind of tailor it for those specific types of roles at that specific company. You want to make sure that you're highlighting your most relevant and transferable skills and accomplishments, and thinking about the needs of that specific organization. Otherwise, you might get a little lost in the sauce there. So that would be my advice. Really good question, though, and I appreciate you asking that. Okay. Does FlexJobs have a recent webinar for the hidden job market? Yeah, so I'm not 100% positive on that. We have so many webinars that it is a little hard to keep track of them all. In terms of the hidden job market, though, we do have some resources that could help you. There are different articles and things like that. You'll see in FlexJobs, there is a tab at the top that says articles that you can go to, and then you can search by different topics. So if you type in hidden job market there, you could find some good resources there. But I'm sorry, I can't remember off the top of my mind if we have a specific webinar dedicated to that. I will say, though, in terms of the hidden job market, what we're talking about here is sometimes companies, are thinking like, oh, we might want someone in this role, but they haven't actually made a posting yet. Or, they're maybe making an organizational shift, or changing their structure a little bit, and different roles come open that they're thinking about maybe just filling by referral or with internal candidates. So your best way to really kind of tap into this hidden job market is to focus on your network. Who are the people that that are working for companies that you're interested in, doing the types of roles that you might be interested in, and reach out to them and talk to them and tell them about what value you potentially bring to the table, what types of roles you're looking for, and start that conversation. I think a lot of us, when we're job searching, we don't necessarily want to admit that. Maybe that's definitely how I've felt before. If I've been out of a job, I'm almost a little embarrassed by that. So I have had a tendency in the past, I don't do this anymore, but I've had a tendency in the past to kind of keep that to myself. I have found, as my career has progressed, that anytime that I'm thinking about making a change or find myself out of a job for whatever reason, I have a trusted group of a dozen or so people that I went to school with, or I've worked with in past jobs, or things like that, that I tap into. I reach out to them and say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Here's my updated resume. Like, let me know what you think. Can I ask you some questions? And they often will present me with jobs that I didn't find through my own search, or organizations that they're familiar with, or maybe have worked with, or they could establish connections. So it's always a good idea to try to tap into that hidden market a little bit using that strategy. So definitely something to think about there. But I'm sorry that I don't remember specifically off the top of my head if we have that webinar available. But we definitely have resources on the FlexJobs website about that hidden job market. So I do recommend using that articles tab, and then searching by keyword in there. But thank you for asking that question. Our next one here, is there a slide with these resources? Yeah, so if you go next to the Q&A tab at the top here in big marker, if you click on resources, you'll see links to a lot of the resources that were discussed during the webinar. Not all of them are included in there, because some of the resources in the webinar were a bit, geographically specific to different areas of the US, things like that. But a lot of these resources are included in that resources tab. And when the recording of this webinar is sent out to you, they will be included with that email with the recording. So you'll have access to those resources beyond just today. But good question, and thank you for asking. All right, let's see our next question here. Is there a process or set of best practices for corralling, tracking, and organizing all the information we gather? Yeah, so that's a really good question as well. When you're in the thick of the job search, you want to have a lot of information, sort of easily at your disposal. So I personally will use an Excel spreadsheet. And, usually when I'm searching for jobs, there's a couple different areas of focus that I have. I'm not necessarily applying to all the same jobs, so I'll create different tabs. One of the tabs will be my research on companies of interest. So, I'll include, columns that have, links to the company's website, or columns that have links to, specific areas of their website, the company name. And then I'll also create tabs that have sort of a tracker for my job search. So, I'll have the company name, I'll have a link to the job posting, I'll have a column where I mark whether or not I applied, with the date that I applied, if I've heard back yet, if I've conducted follow up. So that's just sort of my preference. You could use a spreadsheet like that to help organize that information. I think that that's probably one of the easiest ways to kind of track and organize that information. And then you could update it. I like to color code things. So like if I got a rejection, I'll color code it in red, or if I haven't done follow up yet, I'll leave it blank and then color code it after I follow up, just to try to keep track of that information a little bit more, a little bit more organized fashion there. So, it is definitely, I'm glad you asked that question, because it is definitely important to track and organize that information. It helps you stay focused and a bit more motivated than you might otherwise. And also, it helps you just kind of stay on the ball. You want to make sure that you're following up on your applications within, a week to 2 weeks. If you haven't heard anything back, I personally give it about a week, and then I will follow up either, with someone who is listed as the recruiter or hiring manager, or try to find someone through their LinkedIn page, or if they list their contact information of different individuals on their hiring teams, through some of these resources that were discussed in the webinar. Definitely a good idea to follow up, but you want to make sure that you're tracking that information, so you're not accidentally not following up, or accidentally bombarding someone with multiple follow-ups if you have already done so. So definitely a good idea to track that information. I personally recommend an Excel spreadsheet, but you could also, maybe create a Word document or something like that if that's more aligned with your organization preferences there. But very good question. I appreciate you asking. Okay, our next question here. So this person is moving to a different state and city. Is it better to send a cover letter or resume outlining the date of being in the new city, or wait until after the move to approach new employers? So you certainly could, begin your job search for this new location now. Doesn't hurt. You could explain that information in your cover letter, like you mentioned, that you're planning on relocating, and you have a specific date of when you're going to be relocating. There might be a place in their application where maybe you could put that information as well. They might ask, your location of where you live, and you could put in parentheses after it, we'll be relocating on this date to this city. Or you could, like you mentioned there as well, wait until after your move. But if you're worried about the potential length of your job search process, maybe you're concerned about sort of your financial situation, it wouldn't hurt to start doing that now. And then you could just try to indicate to the employer through your cover letter, or maybe the application, like I mentioned, that you will be relocating. But oftentimes with remote jobs, you might be looking for in person specifically, so this might not be relevant to you. But with remote jobs, sometimes there are location restraints because of different tax and labor laws. But you can often find, the areas in which they are eligible to hire. So you might find some overlap there. Maybe they can hire in your current state and your new state as well. So then it's not necessarily an issue for you there. But definitely a good question there. And you could really kind of take the either or approach. It's not necessarily going to hurt to start now, but if you have the ability to wait until after your move, that might feel more comfortable for you as well. Very good question though, and thank you for asking that. Oh, perfect. So some people are answering the question for me. I appreciate you doing this research. So on the FlexJobs YouTube page, there is a webinar titled Networking and the Hidden Job Market. I thought there was, but I did not want to speak definitively there. And someone even included a link for that. So thank you to both of you who did that. I really appreciate you helping me out there. All right, let's move those aside. Okay, so do you have any tips on how to do this if you're looking for jobs internationally? I've just relocated to a new country, so doing that plus the traditional job search can be a bit tough. Yeah, so when you are relocating to a different country, it can be a little bit tricky. Different employers, based on their own geographic area, may or may not be able to hire in different countries. It can be different, or you can have different resources to use to do some of this research into different organizations based on different countries and geographic restrictions or locations. But my main piece of advice is look at different job search boards, when you are looking at different companies in terms of their geographic restrictions. FlexJobs does a bit better of a job than most job search boards out there in highlighting those geographic restrictions if a company does have that. But the research methods will still be the same. It's just in terms of finding what specific resources to look for. But at the very least, you could be checking out companies on Glassdoor. I saw that mentioned in the comments. Looking at them on LinkedIn, going to their company page to find more information about them, searching their social media profiles. Some of those things kind of transcend those geographic boundaries. So it is still definitely possible to do that information if you're looking in, or to find that information if you're looking internationally, but it definitely can be a little more tricky there. And one of the things that you can also do, I'll mention, if you're using FlexJobs, there is in the advanced search feature, which is linked in the upper right hand corner of the page next to the sort of general job search bar. You can search by different countries. We're a US based company, but you can also search by different countries as well. So that will give you more tailored results that you can use when you're job searching there. But it can definitely be tricky if you are relocating or have recently relocated and are searching in a new country, because the practices can be a little different there. But very good question. Okay, so I'm a little confused on this next question, but I think I know what you're trying to ask here. So let's tackle this. So is FlexJobs checking to see if the job postings are actual postings or a posting as a placeholder to gather lots of resumes? So our website, or our team of researchers on FlexJobs are vetting these postings. One of the biggest things that we sort of care about and keep at the forefront of the work that we do is we're trying to help people avoid scams or illegitimate postings. So our team of researchers are vetting 100% of the postings on our site. So yes, these are actual job postings. You can also verify this by going to the company's website. Like a lot of the postings on our site will then link you out to that company's actual hiring page. Now, if the company changes their mind or changes tactics and all of a sudden decides, okay, we're not going to hire for this job that we've had posted for a couple of weeks, that's something that we can't necessarily verify. But the job postings on our site are legitimate. They have been vetted by our team of researchers. So hopefully that answers your question. But thank you for sharing that with us. uh, Okay, so here's a question. This person is kind of asking sort of to our attendees here, about what they have experienced in following up after a first application. They're returning to work and finding people just don't want to answer phones. You leave a message, state briefly that you are calling for a follow-up and don't get a call back. If you catch the recruiter, they are almost annoyed that you asked. It feels that is hurt your process more than help. So very good question here. I can't speak to other people's experiences in terms of their rate of response with follow up. In terms of calling, though, communication preferences have changed a lot. over recent years, recent decades. So I personally never call. I send a message. My own communication preferences, I don't like being caught off guard. So if somebody were to call me, I might be a little caught off guard and not necessarily want to answer that question, or might be a little thrown for a loop if someone calls me to ask about that kind of thing. So I recommend trying to email or message them, maybe through their company website if they have that feature, or through LinkedIn. That way, they can take the time to look at who you are, read, what you're asking about or inquiring about, pull your application to look at it. Chances are, there's going to be instances where they don't respond, even if you follow this approach to look at, their communication preferences here. But I recommend not calling. I think that people tend to prefer, people guard their time carefully. So I'm not surprised that you found that some recruiters are maybe acting a little bit annoyed that you've called them. So I would recommend doing all of that follow up through just messaging or email. I think that you're probably going to see a better rate of response there. So hopefully that is helpful information for you. And we'll try to squeeze one more question in here. So it says, if a job posting on FlexJobs is over 30 plus days old, how do I verify if the position is still open? Yeah, so that's really tricky. My main piece of advice for that would be try to apply for things that have been posted more recently. Usually you want to apply for things that have that are no older than a week or so. You can maybe go to about that 2 week mark. If it's a job that you are really interested in and it has been posted for quite a while, there is a chance that they're still accepting applications, still pulling people into that hiring process. But I recommend applying for things that have been posted a bit more recently. Now, in terms of verifying that, go to their company hiring page. If it is still posted on their company hiring page, you are now more likely to be assured that that job posting is still open, but there is no guarantee. Some companies forget to pull postings off of the websites that they advertise through, or even their own website. So there's no guarantee there, but your chances are better if you're applying for things that are a bit more recently posted than ones that are hitting that 30 plus day mark. If it's hitting that 30 plus day mark, chances are pretty good that they've started pulling in applicants, started interviewing people, maybe have even filled the position at that point. Also, there is no guarantee that they haven't, or excuse me, that they aren't still accepting people if it is an older posting like that. So if it is one that you are really genuinely interested in, you still see it on a job search board, you still see it on their company website, doesn't hurt to apply for it. But if it's an older posting like that, there is that risk that they have moved on. You can still apply, but I recommend applying for ones that have been posted a bit more recently. So hopefully that was helpful for you. I do apologize. I know we have a couple more questions to get through, but we are out of time, couple minutes over our time, in fact. So we're going to go ahead and close out our webinar today. Appreciate you all taking the time to join us. I hope that you have found some helpful information in this webinar, and that you will consider joining us for future webinars. So thank you again, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. Take care.